First of all, hoping you're all well. Today we have a very challenging agenda, and that's the bracha on soups, cereals, and cholents. Mitzarech, as we'll see, it's a very common shaila. It's a breakfast question, the cereal and milk, hot cereal, dry cereal. For lunch, there's a popular bimkaim lunch, a hot soup. You have a soup in a cup with lakshin, a little bit of vegetables, some water. And of course, generally for a supper there are a plethora of different type of soups. And the question is, what Bracha Rishona do you make? And also, what Bracha Acharona do you make after you have soup that has, assuming it's a shakel soup, and vegetables and bezainis, so you're talking about a choice of three possibilities. Now I must make a disclaimer before we begin. There's a big sugya, especially that we learned it not so long ago, in Brachas Lametes, and Shulchan Aruch Reish Hey, Mei Shlokos, which means if you cook vegetables and you do it kalacha, the vegetable soup is adama. So if you have a Mei Shlokos soup, that the soup is adama, and the vegetables are adama, so there's no shaila. But that was a different sugya, that was tape 149, for those that want to hear it. Today we're discussing a shahakol soup, where you didn't make the soup l'halacha Mei Shlokos. So now we have a quandary. The soup is a shakel, the vegetable is adama, the knelach, croutons, lakshin is mezainis. What do you make on a bowl of soup? Or mezainis cereal and milk? Mezainis or shakel? Then you have the summer shilas of fruit soups. And then of course the question of cholent. So the truth is, cholent on Shabbos we don't make a bracha. But as we know, the minhag has become, we eat cholent shtayim lefaneh v'shtayim l'achreah. We have cholent Thursday night, and Friday afternoon, and Sunday, and Monday if you're a good husband. So you have cholent during the week. What bracha do you make on cholent? Cholent could have barley and kishka mezainis, potatoes and beans, that's hadama. Meat and the soupy part, that's shakol. So again, it's a very commonly asked question. And what makes it challenging, that there's no Gemara regarding the soup combination. In other words, yes, the sugya Mei Shlokos, the vegetable soup, that's a sugya. And I should mention, to give prominence to soup, the Gemara in Brachas Memdal makes a very strong statement. Kol suda she'ein ba srif ein a suda. Which Rashi teaches, a suda that doesn't have soup is not a suda. In fact, we once mentioned, that's why when you make a moitzi on bread, you pata all the dvar maboyim machmas suda. And presumably that includes soup, because soup is an integral part of the Suda. So I know soup is important, but what bracha do you make on it? You'll say, just be a sport. You have a suffix, make all three brachas, or make two brachas. But that, as we know, is absolutely wrong. Or to put it more bluntly, that's the bracha of Atola. Because as the Mishnah says in Masechta Brachas, Daf Mem Daled, Zeh klal, Kol shu ikka v'imoi tfeila mevarech ala ikka upoites atfeila. If you have a soup, you have to determine what's the ikka, and then make a bracha on the ikka, and no bracha on the tafel. Can't be a sport. In fact, the Mishnah Berurah says regarding ikka v'tafel, if you make a bracha on the ikka and then on the tafel, says Mishnah Berurah in Kuf Samaches Mem Gimel, it's a bracha levatala. You'll ask, why is it so bad? I'm not going to eat food without a bracha. How could I eat a tafel? Says Rav Moshe in Cholent Dalet Mem Beis V'Shtermach and Gimel Samach Tes. It's a beferish Mishnah that you don't have to make a bracha on the tafel because you already made a bracha. When? For example, mezainis cereal and milk. So we'll soon see you make a mezainis, and that's it. How could I drink a milk without a bracha? Says Rav Moshe, and the Chazon Ish says the same yisoid in the end of Siman Chav Zayin without the raya. But they both say the same yisoid, chas v'shalom. You don't eat food without a bracha. You don't drink milk without a bracha. But since cereal milk is considered one food, so follow the Mishnah's directive. Mevarech ala ikka upoites atfeila. Since the cereal is one unit, we look at it like one. So the mezainis on the cereal, in fact, covers the shakel as well. So now we understand why you can't be a quota sport and make 2 brachas, because it's a bracha v'atola. You'll be a lamdin, and you say, I know what I'll do. I'll first make on the milk, and then the cereal. So the truth is, it's not as bad. It's not a bracha v'atola, because the shackle is needed, and the mezainis is needed. But it's bad enough, because you could have avoided that shackle. You could have done kalacha like the Mishnah says, unequivocally, there's no machlokes about it. Make a mezainis, upaitis atvela. So, either it's bad or terrible, but there's no room for ignorance. You have to know if you have an ikkev v'tafel, you determine what bracha, and make only one bracha. So to be from, quote unquote, and make 2 brachas is not from, but unfortunately is krum. So again, as I said, to my knowledge, there is no actual Gemara about the ikkev v'tafel in soups, but we do find a Magen Avram. Actually, we'll soon see 3 Magen Avrams, but gives us very clear guidance. The Magen Avram in Kuf Samaches Lamed quotes Tosefta, an interesting food combination. I don't take responsibility for the taste of it, but someone has wine and rice together. So says the Magen Avram, quoting Tosefta, what bracha do you make? So the assumption is that the rice is the ikka, because rice is filling. In fact, rice is a mezainis for that reason. So simply, if you have rice-wine combination, you make on the rice. Wine is from the Zayin Minim, big deal. But it's not from Hey Mine Dagon, so the rice is, the wine is subordinate. You make a mezainis on the rice wine, and the bracha on the rice covers the wine as well. Says the Magen Avraham, but let's say you like the wine better than the rice, no problem. Make the gafen on the wine, and that exempts the rice. You'll ask, make up your mind. Which is the ikka? The answer is no such thing. You make up your mind. If you like rice more, that's your ikka. If you like wine more, that's your ikka. Hilchais ikka v'tafel, like most of Hilchas brachas, is totally subjective. Your friend likes the rice, he'll make mezainis. You like the wine better, you'll make a gafen. Who's doing right? You're both doing right. In fact, I once said, I think I heard this from Rabbi Yakov Zev, when it comes to Hilchas, other halachas, you could just watch what the Rav does, what the Rebbe does, what the Rashiva does. But Hilchas brachas, you can't cheat and watch what the Rav does. Because maybe he likes the rice better and you like the wine better. So he said, B'derech tzachas, that's the pshat in the Gemara in Bava Kama Daf Lamed. Hayman the boil mevi chasida. You want to be a chassid of a Rebbe, a Yeshiva, of a Rav? Fine, you can watch what he does. But not Hilchas brachas. First, Yekaya Mili de brachas. Comes to brachas, you have to know the right halacha. You can't just cheat and watch what the Rav does. But anyhow, here we have a classic example of Hilchas ikkev v'tafel. It is subjective. Fine. So far so good. But the aside is one food, one bracha. Now, let's read the conclusion of the Magen Avram that might be very surprising. V'im kavanasei al shneihem, yivarech al shneihem. Now, he's not talking about an indecisive person that can't make up his mind, which is ikka. He decided he wants both. He likes the wine and he likes the rice. Zok Magen Avraham, no problem. You like both? Make both. The obvious question is that contradicts rule number 1. We said earlier, one food is one bracha. So what are you telling me, that you make 2 brachas on this one food? But the plot is thickening. There's a second Magen Avraham in Reish Ches Zayin, speaks about a different type of soup. Now, I'll read his lashon. He has a oat soup, she'ein ro'uyin rak l'sarfai, she'koirin zuppa. Incidentally, here's the time that I saw, one of the 2 times Magen Avraham refers to zuppa, which is soup. So you have a oat soup, and like someone asked me, she'ein ro'uyin rak l'sarfai, it's only right to burn it. Why should someone want to burn his soup? They told me I have to know a little diktuk here. It's not ru'uyim rak l'sarfai. It's ein ru'uyim rak l'srafai. Srafoi is a noun. Srafoi is like srif, soup. This oat soup is a soup. It has oats in it, but it's a soup. So this is another Magen Avraham regarding soup. Now, there really is a little technical issue. What bracha is the oat part of it? It's a solid oat. So the Magen Avraham goes with the hanacha that if it's a solid oat that's not yet chopped up, it's hadama, which is true. The Mishnah Berurah and Sivkat and the Chav Gimel, the Sharatzin, the Sivkat and the Chavav says, but very often the oats that's cooked well and chopped is a mezainis. So we'll go with the Mishnah Berurah's mashal. You have an oat soup and you have two possible brachas. The oat is mezainis, like the Mishnah Berurah says, but the soup is shakel. What do? Zok to Magen Avraham, well, hey mine dagon, the oat part is very important. You can't ignore it. We learned the Gemara in Brachas, Daf Lamavav Mabeis, Kol sheyesh bechamesh mine dagon is automatically ikar. But then again, says the Magen Avraham, but the ikar is the soup. Because that's really the main part of this oat soup is the soup. Says the Magen Avraham, you got to make two brachas. And he sends you to Kuf Samaches Sif Kat Lamed. So again, the plot is thickening. We have two Magen Avrahams regarding two different types of soups. And in both cases, the Magen Avraham says you make two brachas on the soup. But the question is, why? Isn't the basic Hilchas brachas, Ikar v'Tafel is one food and one bracha? But then we have a Kosav Ashlishi. The Magen Avraham in Reish Hei Vav discusses a interesting soup. The soup is a shakel, but it has in it levivois. Now levivois is conventionally typed as latkes or pancakes, but it's a mezainis latka that's eaten together with a hot liquid that's a shakel, with the zuppa that's shakel. So there again, the Magen Avraham says, if ik kavanase lechel hazuppa, if the ik is the soup, says the Magen Avraham, listen to this, first make a shakel on the soup, and then you make a mezainis on the mezainis latka. And if you say, hey, that sounds familiar to the other Magen Avrahams, you're right, he cross-references. He sends you to Reish Chazayin. So now we have three Magen Avrahams, Kuf Samaches, Reish Hei, Reish Ches, that recommends for a soup to make two brachas. And that's a problem. Why? But the bigger problem is, if you notice, Magen Avraham says, you first make on the soup, and then on the mezainis. Every child knows mezainis goes first, and then shakel. What's going on with this Magen Avraham? So what comes to mind, which is extremely important yesod, yes, you're right. The rule is ironclad. One food, one bracha. Ikar v'Tafel, Mishnah, one food, one bracha. But sometimes it's not really one food. I'll give you two simple examples. Coffee and cake. It almost is set together. That's one, but it's not one food. You make a mezainis on the cake, shakel on the coffee. A little more of a chiddush. You have a plate with a very full main course, very generous balabusta. You have mezainis kugel, vegetables, chicken. The plate is mamish full. Everything is touching one the other. But there's no havamina to make one bracha. Make a mezainis on the kugel, vegetables adama, shakel on the meat. I eat on the same plate. So what? Not a din on plate, a din of eating together. Maybe we'll say that the soup with a mezainis component is like two foods. Once it's two foods, you make two brachas, so it's not a stira. But the yesod is true, two foods is two brachas, but that can't be the explanation of the Magen Avraham. Because the Magen Avraham in Kuf Samaches, speaking about the same rice, wine, soup, says if you eat it together, if you eat and you like them both, make two brachas. But if you like the rice, make mezainis. If you like the wine, you make a gaffer. Obviously, it is eaten together. He says you make one bracha. So it doesn't help for the Magen Avraham. but it does give us tremendous guidance in Hilchos Brachos for soup. If indeed you have a bowl of soup, the same bowl, but it's eaten separately, you could make 2 brachas. A classic example, you have a nice chicken soup, which is obviously a shackle, and in it you have a very big piece of a carrot. So some people eat the soup with a carrot, and it's only shackle, because the ik is the soup. But let's say you eat the carrot separately and the soup separately. So then you make 2 brachas. It's in the same bowl, but then again, the main course is also on the same plate. I'll give you a better contrast. It used to be very common, especially in yeshivas, they serve fruit cocktail. Small pieces of pears, pineapples, peaches, and a few cherries thrown in zeichel l'churban. So that, the bracha generally is bar pri-eitz. Because first of all, the pears and the peaches and the cherries are more ikka, quantity and quality. And the pineapple is sort of tuffle to the eitz. And that's pashut. Why? Because the pieces are eaten together. Or to quote the criterion that the Aruch HaShulchan writes in Reish Yud Beis, if you have an ikka v'tafel that's nechol b'kaf achas, you have a spoon of fruit cocktail, sometimes you have pears and pineapple, sometimes you have the peaches and pineapples, but it's eaten together. It's one food. But lately they started serving fruit cups, which means big pieces of melon, and sometimes you have grapefruit, oranges, kiwi. This is the same mixture. Eitz and adama. Melon's adama, kiwi, grapefruit, and oranges are eitz. But you don't eat the 2 pieces together. You have 1 piece at a time. So what do you do? What bracha do you make on a fruit cup? Very simple. First make an eitz on the eitz, and then you make adam on the melons. It's on the same bowl. So what? The deciding factor is if it's one nechol b'kaf achas, that's ikka v'tafel. If you eat it separately, even if it's on the same bowl, we saw main course, and now we saw a fruit cup. So this is true regarding some issues, and we'll soon see regarding cholent. You have a big piece of kishka, and a big piece of potato, and a big piece of meat. Gesundheit, make 3 brachas, it's 3 foods. But if it's nechal al kaf achas, you have to make 1 bracha because it's teruvos. Now I should mention, especially some people are very nervous, you don't have to be boidik and make a drisha v'chakira. Is this spoon that I'm eating, have everything? L'mashal. If you have a very small pieces of barley, potatoes, and meat in the cholent, so that's nechal al kaf achas. You don't have to make a bedika, check, is this spoon have all the components? If b'derech klal, you eat every spoon, there's a little of each, even if sometimes there's only potatoes, doesn't make a difference. This is the deciding factor. If it's generally eaten kaf achas, it becomes 1. Another point that's negaya to all of ikka v'tafel, especially soups. Let's say you have a clear-cut ikka v'tafel. I'll give you a good example. You have a big, huge knedel, not just the size of a golf ball, the size of a football, a real big knedel in the soup. So you decide the knedel's the ikka. The soup is flavoring the knedel. So you make a nice mezainis, and that's it. You finish the knedel, there's a little bit soup left. So, in the bowl. So of course when no one's looking, you pick up the bowl and you slurp the soup. Wait, stop. Why are you drinking that soup without a bracha? Till now that you had a knedel, so the soup gave flavor to the knedel. But now that the soup remains alone, it's not a tuffle to knedel. How could you slurp that soup without a bracha? This is even more common if you have a mezainis cereal with milk. So you make only mezainis, no shackle. But the end there's some milk left, and it's usually a very sweet milk. Do you want to drink that? How can you drink without a bracha? Now it's not a tuffle. The answer is, we know. Chas v'shalom, you're not drinking without a bracha. Since you made a determination, this is ikka v'tafel, So Mavarach ala ik, you make a bracha on the mezainis, whether it's the knedel or the soup, upaites atvela. The mezainis went on this bowl of soup or cereal. So the remaining milk, although now is not functioning as an ikav tafel, because only milk or soup, but it is included in the original bracha. And that's the Mishnah Berurah and Kuf Samaches, Siv Katan Mem Vav, quoting a Taz. But what's Masig Midvash is that this is so understandable because we know the mechanics of ikav tafel. It's not that there's no bracha on the tafel. Poites atfela. I already had a bracha, and therefore I could consume the rest of the liquid without a bracha. Now, consider, this is very good, but how do we explain our Magen Avram? So there is a suggestion, maybe the Magen Avram holds, if you have a solid and a liquid, it's like two foods. We find in Ilchas Brachas there's lach and yavesh, or in Ilchas Kashrus, Ilchas Bittul, there's a bittul by a yavesh, by lach. Maybe the Magen Avram held that liquid and solid is not a taruvais. Once it's not a taruvais, it's two foods. Two foods is two brachas. And that's what the Tilul David in the end of Kuf Samaches seems to explain the Magen Avram. That liquid and solid is not a taruvais, it's two foods. If it's two foods, it's shaykh two brachas. Now, this Yisoid is questionable. First of all, the Pri Megadim and Reish Hey, Siv Katan Hey, Mishptei Zahav, and Mizgeres HaShulchan and Dalet Vav seem to say beferish. Liquid and solid could be ikav tafel. Who said it's not automatically? But besides that, the Magen Avram himself seems to acknowledge that if you have a liquid and solid, that's the ik is the soup or the wine, then you make a bracha on the wine and a pot is the rice. It's liquid and solid. So it's hard to say this is the hezbollah Magen Avram. Liquid and solid is the deciding factor, because again, certainly our minig is you make mezainis on the cereal, you don't make on the milk. So what seems to be the Pashat Pshat of Magen Avram, and this is going to give us guidance for the rest of this year, and that's what I saw in the Machzah Shekel on the Magen Avram Reish Hey Siv Katan Vav. Yes, the Magen Avram realized that the soup is the ikka. The soup that has the levivios, let's say the latkes, the soup is the ikka. So really what it should be is only shakol. But we have a problem. As we mentioned earlier, the Gemara says in Brachis, Daf Lamavav Amud Beis, Kol sheyesh by chamishes min dagan automatically becomes the ikka. So now we're in a quandary. The soup is undoubtedly the ikka, but the mezainis cannot be negated, it cannot be ignored. The Gemara says you can't ignore mezainis. So what do? You are compelled to make two brachas. And we'll soon see why, but first on the soup and then on the mezainis. I'll give you a mashal l'saber sa'oizim, which is a mitzvah l'farsim. A person for lunch wants to have a healthy, nutritional lunch. He wants to have tuna fish, or liver, or salami, or herring. But he wants to give a little bang to his lunch, so he takes cracker. Cracker with tuna fish, or cracker with herring. What bracha do they make on this interesting combination? So we would say, well, what's the shayla? Mezainis. Kol sheish b'chamesh min dagan. But if you look at the Mishnah Berurah and Reish Yud Beis Siv Katan Vav, it's almost meforish. But the Ketei HaShulchan Nun Ches Siv Katan Ches, it is meforish that in that case you have to make two brachas, because undoubtedly the ikka is the tuna fish or the salami or the herring. The cracker is coming to give taste. In other words, to put it bluntly, you're not eating herring with the cracker. You're not eating cracker with herring. You're eating herring with a cracker. The ik is the herring. So that's why you first make a shackle on the herring or the tuna, and then on the cracker, a mezainis. If you have lox spread or dip on a cracker, so obviously no one eats plain lox spread or plain dip, so that's a tuffle to the cracker. But if you have a meal type food with a cracker, you make two brachas. that applies to our soup with mezainis as well. But we still have one problem to resolve. Okay, I understand. The soup is shakel ikka. The mezainis cannot be ignored, so you have to make two brachas. But why did the Magen Avraham suggest shakel first and then mezainis? Don't we know mezainis is first? So the cheshbon is very pashut that we have a problem. We're not sure. Maybe taka the soup is tafel even to the mezainis, even though it's the ikka. Maybe it's tafel to the mezainis. If you make a mezainis first on the mezainis, you won't be able to make a shakel on the soup. So the Magen Avraham said the best eitzah, first make a shakel on the soup. Then that shakel is necessary. There's no other bracha. Then make a mezainis on the mezainis. This is the hezbah of both the machzah shekel and the nishmas adam, the end of klal nun dalid. You'll ask, I thought you're not allowed to be going bracha she'eina tzricha. How can you make first on shakel? The answer is, in this case, you have no other choice, because to make mezainis and then shakel is maybe wrong, but then again maybe it's required. So you're allowed to make a bracha goyim bracha she'eina tzricha. You're allowed to cause a bracha she'eina tzricha if your intention is to avoid a situation of no bracha when it's necessary. So let's just chazer over what we know. You have to determine ikka v'tafel. Ikka v'tafel works, the bracha and ikka goes in the tafel. When you have a mezainis and an ikka soup, Magen Avraham says you make first a shakel and then a mezainis. So now let's apply to the host of different questions. We'll start with a very popular question. Person wants a quick lunch, a bimkaim lunch I should say. So he takes the cup of soup, instant soup that is, with lakshan, he puts hot water in, and he has a very appealing lunch because it's hot and it has mezainis. Lamaisa, you have lakshan, vegetables, and soup. So the emes is, it's pashit that I think, b'derech klal, the mezainis is the ikka. That's filling, and that's a big part of the soup. You'll say, but it's chicken flavored soup, and we'll soon see chicken soup is not so easily bottled. The answer is, there's no chicken in this chicken flavored soup. It's chicken flavored soup that's 100% parava. So it's not the chasheva basar, tam basar that's not bottled. This is a regular artificial flavoring. So the ikka is the mezainis, you make only mezainis, and if you have a kazayis, you make an alamichya. I see some small cubes of vegetables, but that's not an ikka. That's to give tam, or maybe to give it a little more prominence. But there's no doubt about it, this soup would be a mezainis. If you tell me I am certain I like the soup better than the lakshan, then you have made it to a Magen Avraham. Because in your case, the soup is the ikka, but the mezainis cannot be ignored. So you make a shakel on the soup, and then you make a mezainis on the lakshan. Pashut, that's mamish, like we said. Now, this that I told you, that you make a shakel first and then a mezainis, is the Magen Avraham's psak. As I mentioned earlier, the Samach Chayim questioned this. The Nesiv Chaim, the Naziris Shimshon, the Yad Ephraim on the page, and also Rav Moshe Chelik Aleph Samach Tes, and the Big Day Yesha, Reish Hey, all say it can't be. You can't make shakel before mezainis. And they say there's a mistake in the printing. The Magen Avraham also holds you make first mezainis and then shakel. But the Mishtabura and other paiskim, Achza Shekel, do explain the Magen Avraham as it says. As I told you earlier, because if you make a mezainis first, you won't be able to make a bracha on the soup. So, as Mishtabura seems to say, first make a shakel, that's a safer course of action. Now I should mention the Chayodam, the end of Nundal that I mentioned, he says, the best course of action is make a shakel on a different food. You can have any hour drink by the Suda, or you have a fish on the table, or meat, whatever it is. make a shackle on the different food. Rav Moshe, in the tshuva that I mentioned, adds a simple point, but it might be overlooked. If you are from and you make a shackle on different food, then follow the right order. Make a mezainis on the soup, and then make a shackle on that new food. You can't go wrong. When do you make a shackle first? If you're making a shackle on the soup. But if you're being from making a shackle on something else, you might as well follow hilchais kedima bebrachas, mezainis, and then shackle. Technically, it might be an eitzah also, make a mezainis first, like some places can say, but have in mind the mezainis only covers the lakshin, not the soup. And that I saw the B'tzeil HaChach, Mechelik Beis, Siman Hey, in a similar scenario, you're allowed to limit the bracha. Now the truth is, you're really not allowed to limit a bracha. You're not allowed to say the bracha is only this and not that. That's going bracha she'en tzricha. But evidently in this case, since some say lechatchila mezainis goes first, so if you want to follow the other poskim, you could do it. Make a mezainis first, that only on the laksha, not on the soup, and then you can make a shackle on the liquid. But l'chayr, the Mishnah Berurah does not accept this. Better make a shackle first and then mezainis, and don't worry. Now let's go through a number of practical questions regarding various soups. A really challenging shaila is split pea soup. So we're talking about that there's no big vegetables, it's only the split peas that are dissolved, nimuach. So the chayra, the Veld says, if there are pieces remaining, so you make adama. But if it's completely liquidized, it's a shackle. What do you mean shackle? So they point to a Shulchan Aruch Reish Beis Zayin, which is really a Gemara, that if you have fruit juice, you squeeze oranges, you make a shackle, because it's not the actual fruit. No. So Aibazai, if you have a split pea soup, it's like a pea soup, a pea juice. What's the difference? And the emes is the Magen Avram and Reish Vav regarding a kitniyos that is dissolved, the Ben Ish Chai and Pinchas Gimel regarding peiros that were completely dissolved. If now it's a liquid, you make a shackle. So the chayra, like these shitais, a split pea soup that's completely liquefied is a shackle. The big plea on this chiddush is, how can this be? Mei shlakos, which means a halachic vegetable soup that you cook vegetables in water, is adama, like I told you. The Gemara, that a real mei shlakos is adama. So how could it be? If you have a vegetable soup with the flavor of vegetables, kalacha, it's adama. Now that you have the entire peas in the soup, it becomes a shackle? It's absolutely unthinkable. You know what it's like? Someone cooks a sweet potato and then he liquefies it. He smashes it. How could it be not adama? And this is the shita of the Mekar Bracha Siman Tes. He has this shaila about split peas, that's nimuach, and he says, Ayin Shulchan Aruch Reish Hey Beis. So I looked it up. What is Reish Hey Beis? Mei shlakos is adama. So obviously he, as I saw other paiskim, they're assuming that a vegetable that's nimuach, which is all there, is the same hadama. It reminds me of the Mishnah Berurah's chiddush and Reish Beis, Sif Cotton Mem, that on mashed potatoes you make hadama. It's mashed completely, but Rabbi Yid, it's a potato. It's all there. Then I found a beautiful discussion in the Sefer Sharei Habracha Yud Zayin Sif Memvav. He says for technicality, it could be only a shackle, because one of the klolim of mei shlakos is that the vegetable, after you cook it, has to remain intact. If the vegetable after cooking falls apart, so we saw the Magen Avram and the Ben Ish Chai, that the whole soup is a shackle. And also the Tilo David and Reish Beis Zayin says this. So as you see, split pea soup that has pieces in it, that's primarily pieces, is adama l'chol hadayis. If it's cooked so well that it's all in a liquid, in a soupy form with no mamoshes, then it's really a hard shot to call. Some say shakel, some say adama. The Shari HaBracha, at the end of the Sefer, on B'Tov Reish Samach, in the New Prince, he's discussed this with Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky at length, and Chaim said the best dates is, put a carrot in the soup, eat the carrot separately, make adama, make a shakel on a different food, and you're good to go. So that seems to be the right course of action, but again, if there are pieces, a lot of pieces, not just the zeichel l'chorban pieces, but if it's primarily pieces, it's adama l'chol hadeis. This also will guide us for it's called the linsen soup in Yiddish, lentil soup. Yes, that's the soup that Yaakov gave Esav, so it must be the Haibuna type of soup. But lentil soup is generally hadama because the lentils do not disintegrate, they're still there. Tomato soup is another challenging sugya. You cook tomato soup, now it's liquidy. And for a lamdan you put in rice. What bracha is the tomato soup and what bracha is the rice? So pashtus, since the tomato falls apart, there are no pieces, it should be it should be like a pea soup. But the emes is, it's even more pasha than a pea soup. Because the basic klal is a vegetable is supposed to be eaten raw. If you cook it, you ruin it. Tomatoes is not eaten cooked. And that's why all the poskim say, tomato soup that's cooked is nishtana l'greyusa, and the tomato loses its quality, and the tomato soup is a shakel. Now that the soup is a shakel, now we have a question. I added rice, I cooked it with rice, it's eaten together, what bracha to make on tomato soup with rice? So you might say, wait a minute, rice is mezainis. Isn't that the klal? When you have mezainis in a mixture, it's automatically the ikka? So if you say that, I'll say, look again. Look at the Gemara's lashon. In Brachis Lamavam Beis, the Gemara does not say kol sheyesh by birchas mezainis. The Gemara says kol sheyesh by chameshes mine dagon. Rice is not chameshes mine dagon, and therefore it is not the absolute dominant. It is not primary. So therefore, what's the halacha with a shakel tomato soup with rice? It's exactly like the Magen Avraham says in Kuf Samaches, which ironically enough is an exact analogy. We have rice in tomato soup, we have rice in wine. And in both cases, Magen Avraham says, whatever you like better is the ikka. The rice is not the dominant because it's not chamesh min dagan. It's mezainis, but not chamesh min dagan. So on a good tomato soup with rice, you decide. Don't look at what the Rebbe does or what the Rav does. You like the soup better, shakel, forget about the rice. You like the rice better, mezainis, and that's it. Onion soup is interesting because today we have a little of a different society, but the Shulchan Aruch writes beferish in Siman Reish Hey, onions eaten as is raw is a shakel, because the derech is not to eat onions. I've never seen a person taking an ice onion and biting into it like he bites into an apple. So onions raw is a shakel. We eat raw onion today in salads, precisely. You don't eat it plain, you eat it in a salad. But raw onions is a shakel. The Mishnah Berurah and Sivkot and Vav says even cooked onions is a shakel, because no one eats cooked onions. You use it to flavor a soup, but no one eats cooked onions. The only time that onion could be hadama, which is questionable, some say scallions. Batzel yarek, the green, the scallion, some say is eaten raw. Okay, but regular onions is a shakel. But Mishnah Berurah in Sivkot and Zayin does acknowledge that fried onions, sauteed onions, is adama. If it's prepared enough to be eaten as is, that has the status of a vegetable that's prepared, and therefore sauteed onions is a bayrei pri hadama. Now we have the question. If I take that sauteed onion that is adama and I cook it in water, so this I saw the same bracha in the Tshuvas of Shlomo Zalman at the end of Chelik Beis, Reish Hey Beis, and the Vazaisa bracha Amud 120, quote Rav Shlomo Zalman also, that a sauteed onion soup that has the flavor of the sauteed onions is adama. Because if the onion is adama, so too the soup. The ik is the water, big deal. That's every meish lakos. So if the vegetable onion is adama, so too the soup. The Pischei Halacha in Amud Kuf Samach Gimel and Kuf Pei Beis, again, he has a technical problem that onions are not planted, are not grown, are not cultivated to make soup. He feels it's shackle, but as we said, the poskim seem to agree it's a hadama soup if the onions are indeed hadama. A mushroom barley soup, so obviously mushroom soup is a shackle because mushrooms are a shackle. It might be sold in the fruit store, but it's a shackle. So a mushroom soup is definitely a shackle. You put in barley, and we're talking about barley, our pearl barley that's mezainos, cooked pearl barley is mezainos. So this is kol sheyesh b'chameshes minei dagan, and therefore it would also be a similar to Magen Avram. So if you want the ikka, the nutritional benefit of the barley, the ik is the barley, so only mezainos, and a pot is a soup. If you want the soup, but the barley gives flavor, then you have the Magen Avram's concept. You make a shak oil on the soup and a mezainos on the barley. A fascinating question is, let's say you buy whole barley, not pearled barley, whole barley, which is adama, even cooked, and you make a soup. So this is a fascinating question, because a whole barley that's not pearled, that's complete, is a hadama. As I state in Shulchan Aruch, complete barley, our barley is pearled, which means it's peeled, but a whole barley is hadama. So now we have a question: do we say that the barley is ikka? Well, let's think. Barley is chamesh min dagan, but this particular barley is a bar pri adama. So this is a different combination. Rice is mezainos, but not chamesh min dagan. It's bottle. Mezainos that's heimin dagan is never bottle. Now we have barley that's hadama. Is it the mezainos bracha, or is it the chamesh min dagan? The nafkamin is a hadama barley, or actually today it's very common when we have this granola. Granola is hadama, but it's chamesh min dagan. So this Rabbi Isai brings us to our Magen Avram that we began with. Magen Avram spoke about a oat soup that he calls adama because it was a whole oat, and yet he says that the oat is primary. Obviously, Magen Avram held that it's lav dafka mezainos heimine dagan. It's heimine dagan. Even a granola is the ikka. But the Prima Gadam and Mishptei Sahav there, the Evan Oiza, and Mishte Baruch, and Chav Gimel say no, it has to be a mezainos bracha and chameshes mini dagan. And that's taka why when we spoke about the oat soup, we changed it to a mezainos oat. Now, once you have a mezainos oat or our mushroom barley soup that's mezainos, you cannot ignore the barley. Now, vegetable soup has many different forms, but we're talking about not a meish lakos hadama soup, a conventional vegetable soup. So b'derech klal, it's a soup that doesn't have a strong vegetable flavor, and there are vegetables in it. So I can't say as a rule of thumb, but b'derech klal, the Prima Gadam and Eishel Avram Reish Hei Zayin says that a vegetable that's eaten is nutritional and can't be ignored. In other words, he says generally, if vegetables comes in a nice amount, that's the ikka. The soup is very tasty, true. The soup is a shackle, but the vegetables are dama. But b'derech klal, the soup is there to enhance the vegetables. The flavor of the soup enhances the vegetables, and therefore a vegetable soup, b'derech klal, is a bar pri adama and no bracha on the soup. If you only like the soup, the vegetables just give a little flavor, and they're minimal, gesundheit, make a shackle on the soup, and no bracha on the vegetables. We said earlier, make 2 brachas on soup, chas v'shalom. We didn't say that. We said if you have a soup that has mezainos, you can't ignore the mezainos. But this is vegetables. If you want to see 2 nice tshuvas, the Arletzia and Yodalad Lamed Aleph and Avnei Yashvei Beis Tezvav, discussed at length various soups. But again, if you decide that it's a shakel soup, so make a shakel and the vegetables go along with it. You don't have to keep checking the spoon, am I having vegetables, having soup? If it's one food, it's one bracha. A potato soup, the poskim say, potatoes does not have as strong as a flavor as other vegetables. So b'derech klal, if you want the potatoes, so the potatoes are the ikka. If you want the hot soup and the potato give us flavor together with other ingredients, but the ikka is the soup, so you make only a shakel on the soup, and the potatoes with the other flavoring is a tuffle to the soup. The real interesting question is when you have a chicken soup. Now, I'm not talking about you throw in a flegel, a wing, or a neck to give it flavor. I'm talking about a real McCoy Yiddish chicken soup that is considered the Jewish Penicillin. You cook a soup with a lot of chicken. So the Torah in Reish Hay, it's in the middle, next to Oiz Beis in the New Prince of Torah, the Torah quotes his father, the Rosh, that says, even though Meish Shlaka is Adama, but if you put in basar, and the assumption is basar means meat, but huadin chicken, because chicken has a very strong flavor. So the prominence of basar dictates that you can't ignore a basar tam. So the Torah, quoting his father, the Rosh, said if you have a chicken soup or a meat soup, like in Cholent, the ikka bracha is on the shakel, because that's the ikka flavor. Now again, he's not talking about a little bit of piece of chicken, but he's talking about a real McCoy chicken soup. And the Shulchan Aruch in Reish Hey Beis quotes this la'alacha. So basically, if it's a real chicken soup, then the bracha would be a shakel. Now, as we said, very often today we have chicken flavored soup that's hadama, which is absolutely no chicken in it. But a real chicken soup is a shakel. Now someone asked me, oh, chicken soup is on Shabbos, I don't make brachas. Sunday night I have the leftover vegetables, it's a little bit soup. Oh, that is pashut. A lot of vegetables, that's the ikka. So the chicken soup, which is very chashiv, is flavoring the vegetables. So it's pashut that person makes hadama on the vegetables, and the chicken flavor is flavoring the vegetables. Now if you look at Mishnah Berurah Sif Katan Yud Gimel, quoting Pri Megadim, he seems to say this very yisoid. If you have vegetables l'shem achila, it doesn't become batel. And indeed, the same Baracha in page 439 quotes Reb Shlomo Zalman regarding this type of shaila, that if you have the ik is the vegetables, so even if it's chicken soup, it flavors the vegetables and only adama is required. So basically you have to determine what's the ikka. If the vegetables the ikka, it's only adama. If the soup's the ikka, it's only shahakal. When it starts to become a little more exciting, when you add a mezainis component, dahainu, kneidlach, croutons, or lakshin. So you're wondering what's the shaila? Lakshin soup, I cook the lakshin with the soup. It's one food. So the emes says you're right. If you tell me that my ikka is the lakshin, or typically a big knedel with some soup, the ikka is the knedel, you're right. One bracha, mezainis. First of all, it's the ikka. You told me it's called a matzah ball soup, so it's the ikka. And also, mezainis is the ikka. So Rav Moshe Taka says this in Chel Dal Mem Gimel. If you have a knedel soup, that the ikka is the knedel, and huadin lakshin soup, only mezainis and no shakel. But our shaila is that the starting point is that the soup is the ikka. I want a hot soup on a cold winter day, and I like the lakshin taste, or I add croutons. But I'm telling you that the ikka is the soup. What bracha do you make? So we're very educated. This is mamash al Magen Avram. The ikka is the soup. You can't ignore the soup. But mezainis cannot be negated. So what do? First a shakel on the soup, and then a mezainis on the kneidlach or laksh. The vegetables is generally batel. That's the metzias. Now, if you're a real amdin, so you'll have 3 brachas on a chicken soup. How? The ik is the soup. The mezainis is now batel. And I eat the carrot separately. No, it's very good. You're a major in Meya brachas. you have a soup that has 3 brachas. But basically, you make up your mind. Either the soup is the ikka, so it's a shackle, and then mezainis, or if the mezainis the ikka, it's only mezainis and no shackle. Cholent is also potentially 3 brachas. The kishka, barley is mezainis, potatoes and beans is hadama, and the soupy part of it, or the meat part, is a shackle. But cholent has one maila that it's all cooked together. You're not sprinkling mandlin onto a soup, it's all cooked together. And it's also a taruvais. So, b'derech klal, and again, depending on your nationality, but let's talk about a cholent that is a real taruvais. Small pieces of potatoes, beans, barley, which is all mixed. And this cholent is certified nechal al kaf achas. It's eaten all 3 together. So Dr. Chashulchan and Reish Ches Yud Ches and Reish Yud Beis Hivkat and Aleph, the bracha is mezainis, a fair shikimara. Kol sheyesh bechamesh is minei dagon, you make a mezainis. I like the meat more, doesn't make a difference. Since the mezainis is there, it's not bottled. The Keser Rosh of Chaim Volozhin and Simon Ayin Vav, he says cholent. He doesn't say the word chol, but he says mamish barley, potatoes, and beans is kapashta lishna de gemara, lamad vav mebeis. So it's very likely to say if the cholent is eaten all together, even if the meat is the ikka, but kol sheyesh bay, you make only mezainis on the cholent. Now someone asked me, the barley is mamish a small amount. I said, what do you mean? I only put it in Val's Minig Yisrael. So I never heard of a Minig Yisrael to put in barley, but he only puts it in because traditionally you put in barley. So then, if you're not kavanas achila for the barley, that tak is bottle. You're not eating it, it's just there. It's like someone asked me Sunday night, he wants to have the leftover chopped liver. But there's little pieces of bread from the challah that the kids dipped into the liver. Do you have to make a moitzi on the liver? No. It's bread. Bread comes out moitzi. But that's not kavanas achila. And taka, in the case of the chol and barley, they're just there als aesthetics, to look nice. So that the Rambam says, if you add mezainis to thicken a soup, or to give a color, or to give a smell, so it's bottles. Maybe this is like giving again, for the beauty of it. But Patera cloud barley is there for taste, lasvia, and you make only a mezainis. What's also true, if you have a different way of making cholent, a big piece of kishka, a big piece of potato, a big piece of meat, and you eat each one separately, it's not nechal al kaf achas, then you could make 3 brachas. It's all in the same bowl of cholent, so I'll tell you, your main course is also on the same plate, but you have no problem making a mezainis on the kugel, hadam on the vegetables, shackle on the meat. So too, if the cholent is eaten separately, all the components, you make 3 brachas and shalom al Yisrael. The summer is coming, or here actually. Fruit soup people have typically during the summer. So I'm not talking about a fruit soup during the meal, because that's part of the meal, even though it's fruits, but it's nechol as one of that's the srif, yaitza the srif of a suda. I'm talking about you have a fruit soup without washing. So this is really part of the big sugya of Meish Lakais, but you could trust me, from Reish Ches Sivka and Chav Gimel, it's clear that generally the fruit soup is a shackle, and the fruits are eights. And Mr. Bura seems to be noita that generally the fruit is the ikka, even though the soup is a shackle. So you make a eights on the fruit, and then you can have the soup together with it, because the soup is enhancing the fruit. It's a way of selling fruit as a soup. But if you tell me I like the soup, I don't care about the fruit, then fakert, make a shackle on the soup and not on the eights. Cereal and milk is a perfect example of our sugya. I'm talking about a mezainis cereal, obviously, and milk, which is a shackle. If you have a shackle cereal, so there's no shackle. I'm talking about a mezainis cereal and a shackle milk. So typically, you can't eat plain cereal. The milk enhances the flavor and makes it edible. So milk is a real tuffle. So you make a mezainis on the cereal and nothing on the milk. Rav Moshe in Chelik Dalad Mem Gimel says, but if the kavana is for the milk, then you'd have to make two brachas, because the ik is the milk, Mazayin is not negated. Now someone asked me, how is it shaykh the ik is the milk? So he said he heard from a Rav that the mother that wants the children to drink milk for the calcium benefit, but children will not drink milk, so she buys all these colorful, sweet cereals, so she gets the milk in. But the ik is the milk. That's the case of the milk being the ikka. So I told him I don't think that's correct, because it's true the mother wants the milk ikka, but who's making the bracha? The child. So ikka v'taf does not depend on the mother. I told him, a boy wears a sweater because his mother's cold, or you wash the dishes because your mother wants. But you can't make a bracha if the mother wants the milk, because your ikka is the cereal. So you have to find a good example, but basically, cereal, but there are klal, the bracha on the cereal is mezainis, and that part is the milk. Cooked cereal is a beferish gemara. That's the case of ma'isa kedera, farina, oatmeal, wheatina is a mezainis. Shulchan Aruch says in Reish Ches Vav, he does it if it's a very watery farina, and obviously that you can't use a spoon, you drink it. So if it's so watery, it doesn't have the consistency of mezainis, that would be a shackle. And last but not least, you might wonder, one second, how could you make a shackle on a mezainis drink? The answer is beer is a mezainis drink, which is a shackle. And last but not least, the bracha acharona on all of these foods, which should be very simple. So let's talk about a typical case. You have a clear-cut psak, mezainis cereal, ikka the mezainis. I made only a mezainis on the cereal. Do I make a bar nefasha when I finish because I had milk? So that the Mechaber says in the beginning of Reish Yud Beis, ikka v'tafel works on Bracha Rishona and Bracha Acharona. So if you determine that this bowl of cereal patters the milk, it's only mezainis, then guess what? You don't make a bar nefasha on the milk. Even though you had a revius of milk, it's irrelevant. Ikka v'tafel works on both ends. If you have knedel soup, so you make an al-michya on the knedel. If you had a kazayis, of course, we have chilas pras. Ignore the soup. But let's say you had a cholent, big piece of kishka, big piece of meat, big piece of potato, and you ate a kazayis of each, then you can't make an al-michya and pata the meat and the potatoes. Because since the bracha rishona required separate brachas, so it's not ikka v'tafel. So how could the al-michya help for meat and potatoes? You'll say, but al-michya is a big bracha. True, too big. Al-michya helps for the milk and the cereal. That's because the milk was a tafel. But if the starting point is there are two brachas, then it's not ikka v'tafel. You make an al-michya on the mezainis and a bar nefashos on the bar nefashos food. Now, someone asked a very gishmak shayla. Let's say a person had a half a kazayis of kishka mezainis and half a kazayis of potatoes or meat. Together it's a kazayis, but independently there's no kazayis. So I told him, I'll ask you a riddle. How is it shaykh that a person eats a food that's mezainis, but the bracha is bar nefashos? Can't be, it's a stira. I don't mean rice, of course. Or better yet, a better riddle. A person had exactly a kazayis. This was determined, no more or less, exact kazayis of a cheese danish, which is mezainis, and the bracha is bar nefashos. How is it shaykh? I'll tell you how it's shaykh. Very simple. Let's start with the cheese danish. Let's analyze that. You told me that it's a cheese danish, and exactly a kazayis, no more or less. So if it's a cheese danish, so part of it is the cheese. Now it's a skatnu ha cheese danishes, it's less and less cheese, but let's assume there's 5% cheese. That doesn't count to make an al-michya, because it's separate. Mishnah Berurah holds that you count the sugar and the other ingredients into the flour, but cheese, part of it is separate. So now we're in a problem. If you had exact kazayis of cheese danish, that means 5% is cheese, so you're missing a kazayis. So Mishnah Berurah says, taka, in that case, you'll have to make a mezainis because the mezainis is the ikka, but you'll make a bar nefashos. We'll add the flour to the cheese. In fact, the Mishnah Berurah says if you had a half a kazayis of bread with a half a kazayis of fish, you make a bar nefashos. How could a bar nefashos cover bread? How can a Bar Nefashis cover Mezainis? So the Farish doesn't. The Farish says, if you have a Chiyav benching or a Chiyav Alamichya, then Bar Nefashis doesn't cover. But in this case, you don't have a Chiyav benching, it's only half a Kazayis of bread. So here we have an interesting twist. You could have a cheese Danish, a Kazayis of cheese Danish, that's Vade Mezainis, but the Bracha Acharona is Bar Nefashis. So eat a bigger piece of cheese Danish and you're okay. But this works in our Cholent case. You had half a Kazayis of Kishka, half a Kazayis of potato or meat, you combine the two and make a Bar Nefashis. If you had a Kazayis of each, Gesundheit, make it two different Brachas Achronis. You had raisins and peanuts, half a Kazayis of raisins, half a Kazayis of peanuts, can't make an ala eitz. It's only half a Kazayis. So what do? Make Bar Nefashis, because it's eaten together. But if it's eaten separate, two brachas. And last but not least, let's say a person had a half a Kazayis of a knedel and half a Kazayis of soup, or half a Kazayis of Mezainis cereal and half a Kazayis of milk. Do we add it up to make a Kazayis? And the answer is, wait a minute. Food is Kazayis. Beverages, mashka, is revius. And that's exactly why the Mishnah Berurah says in Reish Yud Sif Katan Aleph that you don't combine liquid and solid. It's two different currencies. Varaya, it's a different share, a different time span. So you could combine kishka and meat. You could combine bread and herring, but you can't combine liquid and solid. But the chiddush of the day, or Moshe says in Chelik Aleph Siman Ayin Hey, let's say you had a soup, a meishlakay soup, a certified vegetable soup, vegetables and hadama soup, because it's meishlakais. You ate half a kazayis of each, both hadama. It doesn't make a difference. You can't combine it. Why? Because liquid and solid does not combine. So the ikka is everything else does combine, not liquid and solid. Let us just chazor. We learned today, Be'ez Hashem, the side of ikka v'tafel is you're not eating without a bracha. The bracha on the ikka goes on the tafel. It's wrong to make two brachas. Soups is a possibility of two brachas because it's a technical challenge. The soup is the ikka, and the mezainis can't be negated. But if you eat any mixture separately, big carrot, big kishka, it's two different foods. It's no different than a main course with different food on the same plate. Soup in a cup is mezainis, unless you want the ikka, the soup. The order when you have a shackle, when you have a mezainis shackle, is first the shackle on the soup, if that's the ikka, and then a mezainis on the cereal. Split pea soup, we could assume, is if it's liquidy, you could make a shackle on it. If there are pieces, it's adama. Lentil soup is adama. Onion soup, typically, unless it's done right, is a shackle, unless you make it from sauteed onions. Mushroom barley soup, probably the bracha is mezainos. If you want the soup, it's two brachas. Vegetable soup, usually the vegetables, the ikka, and therefore only one bracha. Real chicken soup is dominant. A bowl of soup with vegetables, the ikka is the vegetables, only adama. If you add mezainos, it's never bottle. If the mezainis is the ikka, it's only mezainis. If the soup is the ikka, for a shackle, and then a mezainis on the soup. A fruit soup is generally only a boyer pio eitz. Cholent, if it's eaten together, is one bracha, usually the barley. Big pieces is, then you go after each separate food, because it's not an ikka v'tafel. A few barleys just thrown in is negated, and cereal and milk is really dependent. If the mezainis dik, it's only mezainis. Cooked cereal is mezainis generally. If you have a ikka v'tafel, it's one bracha acharona, unless you ate it separately, because different brachas, two different brachas, different bracha acharona. But generally, bracha acharona is the same like bracha rishona, unless you didn't have a kazayis of barimin and mezainis. You could add mezainis to other food, even bread to other foods. But, and here's the chiddush, that if you have a liquid and a solid, even if it's the same bracha, even if it's the same soup, they do not add. Thank you all for listening. Have a wonderful week. Okay.